Why, hello there. Welcome to Misty Mystery. Today we are going to be discussing the tragic case of Helen Jewett. Born in Augusta, Maine in 1813 on October 18th, she was given the name Dorcas Doyen. I read that she had a rather large family, although I only have information on her parents. Her mom passed away when Dorcas was only 10 years old. Her father, whom had struggled with alcohol and was a poor shoemaker, could not properly care for his daughter and had her sent away to the city to be a servant for wealthy people. Dorcas took to her new role quite well. At only age 10, she went from home to home, cleaning, making coffee, trying to blend in with the wealthy people, the way they spoke, their mannerisms. And soon enough, Judge Nathan Weston took a liking to the young lady, and at age 12, Dorcas had her new home at the Weston family residence. She was there as one of their servants, as well as to be a playmate for the judge's two young daughters around Dorcas's age. Dorcas had been studying the way the wealthy people acted and behaved, spoke and dressed, to the point where she was able to mimic them. She had taught herself to behave the way they behaved, and she became very well read. See, the Western family home had a nice big library, and Dorcas was allowed to go in there and read whatever her heart desired. Now, this was rare in the 1800s. Most young ladies were forbidden to read books, and if they were allowed to read books, it was only certain types of books, so that they would not be encouraged to have sex before marriage or other behaviors that were not really approved of. About a year after Dorcas moved into the Weston family home, a writer by the name Anne Royal came to visit, and Dorcas made such a good impression on her that she asked that Dorcas be featured in her travel book. This made Dorcas a bit of a local celebrity. Dorcas was a charming and beautiful young lady. In her young teenage years, she very much enjoyed going to the library a short distance away from the Weston family residence. It is said that she fell in love with the gentleman who owned the library, obviously an older gentleman. This librarian very much enjoyed young Dorcas's company and encouraged her to keep coming and seeing him and spending time with him. Eventually, at age 17, Dorcas was ushered out of the Weston family home. There was rumors that she had slept with a family member of the Weston residence, or there was also a rumor that she had slept with Judge Nathan Weston himself. But the judge had written that Dorcas had sex with a young man in town, and so she was pushed out of the social circle. She was then pretty much forced to move to Portland, Maine, and she changed her name. She now became and went by Marie Stanley for a short time. The few months she spent in Portland, Maine, she became a sex worker to pretty much survive as a young woman with no family, no friends, nowhere to live. This was her new reality. So, after those few months, she then moved to Boston, where she changed her name yet again. So in Boston, she was known as Helen Marr. Then in 1832, Helen Marr moved to New York City and changed her last name to Jewett, and now she was known as Helen Jewett. Here she moved up the ranks as a sex worker. She now entertained the highest class of men, but still had her, broke asses as well, who would spend all their money on her. The clients that spent the most time and money on Helen would receive nice love letters from her, as well as the odd occasional sewn gift. She enjoyed to sew and create things, as well as write and read, of course. She met a younger man, Richard Robertson. From what I gather, he had helped her out in some mugging incident. A man outside of a theater was grabbing at Helen, trying to get her purse, when Richard came to her rescue and gave Helen's purse back to her. This is when Helen offered him to come see her and gave Richard her card. Richard was 18 years old when they met, and Helen was 22, but Helen likely lied about her age, making herself seem younger than she actually was by 2 to 3 years. It is said that she fell hard for Richard, and he had a dark side, and he would push her away, and that time she would push him away, but they always seemed to come back to one another. Richard would see other sex workers, and when Helen found out, she was outraged. She thought Richard would only come to her, and Richard would threaten the other sex workers to lie to Helen. Richard refused to stop seeing other women, and so their relationship was on and off from then on out. Helen would keep trying to reel him in, thinking that she could win his heart with portraits of herself and love letters. At one point, Richard had had enough and sent all of her letters back and all of her gifts, all of her portraits, and asked that she return all his letters and gifts from the past few months that they had spent together. About a year later, when Helen was 23 years old, she had found out that Richard had plans to marry another woman. Whether this was true or not is unclear. There was also rumors that the young lady was pregnant with Richard's child, and this is why he was going to marry at such a young age, because his character spoke otherwise of a married man. He did not seem like he was quite ready to settle down. Richard wanted nothing more to do with Helen, so she threatened to expose him. Any deep, dark thought that he had shared with her, all their sexual encounters. If his new lady did not know of Helen, Helen would be sure to let her know if Richard would not comply and see her one last time. So it was then on Richard's 19th birthday that he went to see Helen, and it was also then that she would wind up dead. The older woman of the house who rented to the young sex workers was told by Helen not to allow her regular in that night, but to let Richard in instead. Richard came in almost in a disguise. He was all covered up in a cloak and had his face mostly covered. But the lady of the house was familiar with Richard and recognized his voice and mannerism, so she led him up to Lady Helen's room. Shortly after, she brought Helen and Richard some wine, requested by Helen. She saw that their room was dimly lit with candlelight, and Richard was lying in Helen's bed reading. Helen wanted her to come drink with them, but she declined. However, to her it seemed like they were getting back together again. Helen made quite a bit of money and was able to take care of herself, having a maid clean her room twice a day. Helen had many fancy dresses as well. Her room was well kept, to say the least. While the girls were at home in their rooms, the latch was always done up inside the doorway, so that way people could not just come in their room whenever they wanted. So as the lady of the house was letting another young man see another sex worker, she noticed that Helen's door was unlatched. The older lady who took care of things around there had pushed Helen's door open slowly. To her shock and horror, Helen's bed was on fire and Helen was laying in it, dead. She ran outside, calling for help. She caught the attention of two men who ran in the home and was able to put the fire out. They narrowed it down to one suspect, Richard Robertson, who had stayed with Helen the night before. Although there was many people on his side, saying he could not have possibly have done it, and gave an account for his whereabouts during the time of the murder. The prosecution was able to bring forth to light Richard Robertson's diary, which carried many deep, dark, evil thoughts. He spoke of being different than everyone else, how no one would ever understand him, and how he liked tricking people into thinking he was a good human being, when really he was something like a monster. Even with this evidence, even though he was the last man or person known to have seen Helen, his court was a shit show. The whole trial was cited for him, and the prime witnesses who lived at this so-called whorehouse were basically discredited for being sex workers. The judge had told the juries to discredit all of the sex workers' accounts of the night that Miss Helen Jewett was murdered, so that only leaves the people who were really pro Richard Robertson, who believed in his innocence. So, as I said, the trial was very one-sided. Needless to say, and I'm sure to no one's surprise, Richard Robertson was free to go. No one has ever been charged with Helen Jewett's murder, and her case remains a so-called mystery to this day, but there is a very likely suspect. Helen Jewett was only 23 at her passing. She was living her best life, with money and nice clothes, a home. However, she never could get Richard's heart, which is what she really wanted. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you for another Misty Mystery very soon. Have a fabulous day. Today's lesson, ladies and gentlemen, is to not always trust your heart, for it can mislead us, and it can feel love for the wrong type of people, even someone who claims to be evil and a monster.